I'm Dr. Ferghal Armstrong, and for decades we've been told that fat is the enemy of heart health. But here's something that might surprise you. The landmark 7-country study, the very research that shaped our modern understanding of fats, showed that total fat intake wasn't associated with heart disease at all. Greek islanders consumed 40% of their calories from fat, mostly olive oil, and had remarkably low rates of heart disease. So what's the real story? Today we're diving into the biochemistry of fats and debunking some persistent myths that social media keeps alive. Let me paint you a picture from my years in clinical practice. Fats, or lipids as we call them scientifically, are essential for your body's function. They insulate your cells, help you absorb fat-soluble vitamins, and form the very structure of your cell membranes. But here's the catch. Fats don't dissolve in water, so they cannot travel through your blood on their own. Think of lipoproteins as your body's logistics fleet. LDL particles, the so-called bad cholesterol, are like delivery trucks dropping off cholesterol bricks at various construction sites throughout your body. When there are too many trucks, these unused bricks pile up on the roadway, creating what we call atherosclerosis, essentially a traffic jam in your blood vessels. On the flip side, HDL particles, the good cholesterol, act as the cleanup crew. They pick up those leftover bricks and return them to the liver, keeping your cardiovascular roads clear. This reverse cholesterol transport is one of nature's brilliant protective mechanisms. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the study that's been misrepresented thousands of times on social media. Ansel Keys' 7-country study, which began in 1958, was groundbreaking, not for what people claim it found, but for what it actually discovered. The primary source material is crystal clear. Total fat intake wasn't the problem. The Greek cohorts in Crete thrived on 40% fat diets, mostly from olive oil. What was strongly associated with heart disease? Saturated fat. And here's where it gets interesting. The study did analyze sugar intake. Initially, sugar appeared guilty, but when researchers adjusted for saturated fat, that association disappeared. Sugar looked bad simply because populations eating high saturated fat also tended to eat high sugar. The data was robust. Even after adjusting for sugar intake, saturated fat remained the single predictor of heart disease risk. This wasn't cherry picking. This was rigorous epidemiological research. You've probably heard the claim that France was conveniently excluded from the 7-country study to hide the French paradox, the observation that French people have low heart disease rates despite rich diets. Here's what actually happened, and I find this fascinating from a historical perspective. France was invited to participate. A French representative was present during the pilot study in Italy, but French researchers ultimately declined, likely due to lack of funding or interest. More importantly, the French paradox concept didn't even exist in scientific literature until 1981, over 20 years after the study was designed. At the time, French dietary data showed nothing particularly unusual, and their heart disease records were often confounded by poor diagnostic categorization. The paradox is largely an artifact of hindsight and incomplete data, not evidence of some grand conspiracy. So what should we do with this information? After decades in medicine, here's my advice. Don't fear all fats. The Mediterranean diet's success isn't despite its fat content, it's because of the type of fat. Focus on replacing saturated fats with unsaturated fats. Think olive oil, avocados, nuts, and fatty fish. When you're cooking, swap butter for olive oil. Choose lean proteins, but don't obsess over total fat grams, and critically be skeptical of social media health myths. The science is more nuanced and more interesting than clickbait headlines would otherwise suggest. Remember, your heart health isn't about eliminating entire food groups, it's about making informed choices based on solid evidence. If you find this useful, subscribe to MedHeads for more evidence-based health insights. I'm Dr. Ferghal Armstrong, and I'll see you in the next episode.